We actually, well, there's gonna be my first edit. Learning to edit. Because Tommy's injured. He can't do it or write notes, but he can type with his left hand. Slowly. Hello, pals and confidants, and welcome to this week's episode of Accidental House Husband. We hope that you had a great Thanksgiving and that it was full of food and fun and a little bit of craziness, because Thanksgiving isn't Thanksgiving unless somebody gets a little bit wild. You know there's one person in every group that takes it up a notch. You know it's true, and if you look around at your group of friends and you don't have that person, it's you. If you have seen any of our videos from the past, you know that we end every video with our slogan, live for fun and spread joy. I want to tell you a little bit of a story about when I first moved here to Detroit and somebody who I think really embodies that spirit. A year and a half ago, packed up all of our belongings in North Carolina and moved up to the Motor City. One of the things that you have to do when you're getting accustomed to a new neighborhood is find where you can get easy things, groceries. If you don't have laundry in your apartment, you need to know where you can go to wash your clothes. This time around, my most important thing that I needed to find was a convenience store and a liquor store. Luckily, I found those together in Eve's Market. Eve's Market was located in downtown Detroit, underneath Detroit City Apartments, which is right in the heart of downtown. It's right off of Broadway. Oh, it's not off of Broadway. I don't know what street that's off of. It's not the super store. Yeah, it's fine. Eve's Market was great because it was not only a convenience store, but it also had pizza and it also had liquor and a really impressive wine selection. I really enjoyed going in there because I could get a bottle of white wine that was already cold and in the fridge under $10 and be out the door. I started going in there pretty regularly and started seeing the same face behind the counter every day. I just decided to introduce myself, and I found out that the woman that I had been talking to's name was Eve, and that was actually her store. It made sense. She was there all the time. I pretty much only saw her working behind the counter, and she was always such a joy to go in and see. Now, Eve was a real spitfire. She was not just the sweet old lady that worked at the convenience store. You have to remember, she has been working at this convenience store and owning this market for probably the last 20 to 30 years. So she has seen some things in downtown Detroit. So she has postings up on her wall, which I would always laugh at. And it was like security footage of these blurs of people. They look like ghosts, sort of coasting through her store. And it said has no morals, alcohol thief, what was one was no dignity. And they would just be posted and I'd step up and I'd be like, how are you doing? She'd be like, I am just so good, darling. It just killed me every time. I'd actually had heard her go after some people because people would come in and they would try to hustle her and she was not playing that game. And I would hear her screaming at people, at these customers. I was just like, and she'd be like, get out of here, I already told you, we can't help you here. And would just be screaming, yelling at this person. I'm just like, cannot even believe the things that are coming sort of out of this small little woman's mouth. And then boom, on a dime, she would turn to me and be like, darling, how are you? How's my boy? And it would just be so amazing how she would be able to just keep her business in order, not take any crap from anybody, then turn around and just give you the biggest, warmest smile. The first time I ever went in there, I met Eve, just a transaction, general, just saying hello and chatting. But as I went in there more and more, of course, as I generally do, I really got to know her. And, I really got to know more about her history at the store. I found out that she, commuted every day. So she was driving about an hour back and forth from around the Lansing area to get down to this store. She would sit there and she'd park her car out front and she'd have her phone ready to up her parking just in case the parking meter went by. And she could see it because she had these big old windows that she could look out of. And she was also going to get her doctorate in business and was still continuing her learning. Meanwhile, running the store, never saw anybody else there, and was always just so pleasant. It was amazing. The second or third time that I went in is when she asked me if I had a girlfriend, and I could only just help but laugh because it sort of took me back. It's been a while since somebody possibly confused me as straight or asked me if I might have a girlfriend. But I explained to her that I had a husband, and she just lit up. She just, oh, that's so amazing. At this point, I was wondering if I could bring my dog. Usually I stop in stores, and it's easy if I can take Trixie in with me because she's usually out with me when I'm walking. She said, oh, absolutely, you can bring the dog in here anytime. I love dogs. And I said, fantastic. Well, you'll see me pretty much in here twice as much then. And so just began this amazing friendship. Being that we move around a lot, I have collected a lot of social friends where I don't know a lot about the people that I see on a daily basis, but I really look forward to the interactions that I have with them. Whether it's the person that I see at the convenience store or the person that I see that I pass that is a local mall walker. It's just really great to see friendly faces, wave hello, say a cheerful good morning, and just, go on your day. It's all part of the living for fun and spreading a little damn joy in this world. So I've always been in there chatting with her. I take Trixie in there, and she would always ask about how Tommy was doing and how our family was doing, and she always referred to us as her boys. It was always so nice to sort of feel welcomed and comforted, in this new neighborhood that she sort of had seen change, and she didn't see us as sort of like infiltrating the neighborhood. She saw us as just, one of her family, and really treated us like that. She would always ask about my parents and how they were doing, and I would always say like, okay, well, you can go up to them, but then they have to send you back to me because, you're my boys too. And it was just lovely. I mean, it was just so lovely to have this friendship and this relationship with somebody that I didn't know that well, but really enjoyed getting to know better. Over the course of the time that I got to know Eve, she did tell me that in the past she had battled cancer, and it seems that the cancer had sort of come back about 6 months ago or so. She was not always in the store when I'd pass by, and I didn't always see her, but I usually could get an update from one of her family members as they were working at the front counter. And, she came back a few weeks later, and I saw her, and she definitely looked like she was a little more tired and a little bit more run down. And I asked her how she was doing, and she just simply said she wasn't doing very well, but immediately turned it back to me and asked me how I was doing, and asked us how we were doing and how our family was and how Tommy was and how Trixie was. I think that at the time Trixie wasn't with me, and I was able to sort of stand at the front counter. I was there in the middle of the day, and there wasn't anybody sort of waiting behind me, so I just got to stand at the counter with her, and we held hands, and we just talked about how she was doing and how her treatments were going, and really just wanted to share that moment with her. And I was really glad that I got a chance to just sort of peacefully stand with her. And I gave her our love, as I always did, and I turned around and I walked out of the store, and I continued on my day. A few weeks later, I went back into Eve's Market, and she wasn't there at the time. We were popping in with a friend of mine. We had actually just had lunch, and we're looking to get some more adult beverages and head back to my apartment. And we wandered in there and grabbed what we needed and wandered up to the front counter and saw that it was her nephew that was working behind the counter, and asked how Eve was doing. And he said that she wasn't doing well and that she had actually been in the hospital for the last couple of weeks. And he said that there were some signs for us that we could sign if we were interested. And he pointed over into the corner, and there were a couple of large pieces of foam core. Now, these are essentially these large pieces. If you have worked in theater at all, it's what we make all of our models out of. But it's essentially like poster board. And there were hundreds of signatures all over these two boards. And it was just little notes and little things, just well wishes, just from the people that had passed through and knew Eve and were really thinking about her. So I went up and I found a little spot, and I added my well wishes and, wandered out and continued on with our day. A few days ago, I walked into Eve's Market. Actually, I ran into Eve's Market. I was planning on making barbecue pizza, and I was only lacking one thing for my recipe, which was the barbecue sauce. So it's literally barbecue and pizza, and I was missing barbecue. So I parked my car and I ran into the local convenience store that's actually a little bit closer to where I park, and they didn't have any. So I looked down at my watch, and I was actually back in Detroit when Eve's was still open. So I thought, I'll run over there and they'll definitely have it. So I scooted over to Eve's and I walked in the door, and she wasn't up behind the counter, but it looked like they were getting ready to close. It was pretty quiet, and I looked around to see if there was any sort of signs of any sort of like well-wishing, and I didn't see anything. So I wandered to the back and I found the barbecue sauce that I needed, and I wandered up to the front counter and I handed it to the young gentleman who walked up. I hadn't seen him before. He wasn't one of the, I'm assuming that he's a family member, but wasn't one that I had seen before. I asked him, I said, how's Eve doing? You know, I haven't seen her around for a while. And he told me that she had passed away a few weeks ago. And it really touched me. You know, I was really sort of taken over by emotion at the moment. And I think I could tell that the guy was really sad to have to tell me that news. And I think when he told me, he knew that I would be upset about it. And it was, one of those things that it starts to set in and you start to let it sort of play back in your head that the person that you see and that you've seen and that shares these moments with you is not going to be around anymore. And it's not something that's like a parent or a sibling or a friend that you've known, that you share all these intimate details. It's just somebody that made you feel good. It made you feel like you were part of their family and part of the neighborhood. And that's what Eve did. And that's all what part of the, living for fun and spreading joy is. She didn't have to be nice. She didn't have to provide that smile. I could have just been another sort of urchin that strolled in off the street after she had been putting up with 30 years of people trying to sort of screw her over and steal from her, but she didn't. She looked at the good of people and she really focused on every new face and treated them as their own individual person. And I think that that's a lesson that we can all take. I walked past Eve's market yesterday and I took a picture of the front of the store because I realized that I didn't even have a picture with Eve. We weren't, hanging out on a regular basis. I saw her in short passing, in short increments of time. But even in those small little moments, she really made an impact and she really has left a place, a mark on my heart, in my life. And I'll never think of downtown without thinking of Eve. And every now and again, even when I don't live, if I don't live in downtown and I don't live in this area, when I'm down here, I'll probably pass through and I'll have those memories of her standing behind the counter and, just offering those friendly hellos. One word that Eve used all the time when I would go in there was wonderful. She always said that things were wonderful, and she always responded when I would say how we were doing. She would say, wonderful, that's wonderful. And I think that's a word that we should use a little bit more. How is our day going? If it's great, if it's wonderful, let's not be ashamed or be afraid to really talk about how good things can be. I know that things can be hard and things can be rough and there's people that we miss in our lives, but I will try to uphold the legacy that Eve has left behind, living for fun and spreading joy. We will miss her, but her legacy will definitely not be forgotten. Cancer has touched a lot of people in our family, and it's important that we continue to not only raise awareness, but also raise funds so that we can fight against all the different cancers that are affecting our lives. Listed down below, we will have links to some of our favorite charities that you can donate to if you are interested in helping fight against cancer and help find a cure. One of our favorite is the Lustgarten Foundation. They're fighting against pancreatic cancer. And you can also donate to the American Cancer Society, and we'll have both of those links down below. I hope that you have enjoyed my sharing of my story and my relationship with Eve with you in this episode of Accidental House Husband. She was somebody that really touched my life, and we will very much miss her. And I hope that if you have somebody in your life that you don't necessarily know all that well, but just makes you smile maybe day to day, make sure you let them know and make sure you ask them how they're doing. And if you're doing great, maybe it can be a little bit more like wonderful. Live for fun and spread joy, folks, and we'll see you next week. Bye.